Or do they want
Good morning. It is 9 a.m. and I'll call to order the Board of Directors special meeting workshop for Wednesday, September 3rd, 2025. May I have a roll call, please?
Director Meyerhoffen,
Here.
Director Duff,
present?
Director Martin,
Here.
Vice President Griffith,
Present.
President Sewell.
Here.
Thank you. We have quorum.
Thank you. Seeing that all 5 directors are present, we can skip item 3. Item 4 is public input. This is the opportunity for members of the public to address the board on matters within the board's jurisdiction. Please limit comments to 3 minutes or less. State law prohibits the board from discussing or taking action on any item not listed on the agenda. Do we have any members of the public wishing to address the board today?
President Sewell, not online.
Okay. Seeing none here in person, we will move on to discussion items. Item 5, illegal discharge enforcement ordinance revision. General Manager.
Thank you, President Sewell. Item 5 regarding illegal discharge enforcement. This is something that was discussed by the board and we were given direction. Just to give a quick update of the discharge limits, back in March 2024, MSWD revised the pretreatment discharge limits to mirror the discharge limits at the Horton and Wright facility. Staff has continued to work with our customers to meet the pretreatment limits. To date, we still continue to have 4 customers who have been issued cease and desist notices over the last two months. I'm sorry, my screen keeps going back and forth. Civil penalties of more than $100,000 have not changed the behavior of these customers. When discussing it with the board, this board asked staff to review Article 11, enforcement of Ordinance 2008-02, establishing the rules and regulations for sewer service. So what we did is we looked through, and this is a snapshot of what we have on our website. This is our the codification, our governing ordinances. So this is just a snapshot. Obviously, the question is, how do we modify these things to ramp up the enforcement, as well as we were talking about termination of services. I will start with talking about how we're going to increase the civil penalties. What you'll see here is you'll see that 11.05 is actually the specific ordinance as laid out, and then the section 602.11E is actually where it is in our governing ordinances. Keeping the first couple of sentences, or the first sentence the way it is, we are looking to add what's in red, unless otherwise directed by the general manager, board action, or assigned violation by other regulatory agencies such as U.S. Fish and Wildlife, California State Water Quality Control Board. The civil penalty shall be $1,000 for each day, for each violation that occurs for the first 90 days. If the violation occurs past 90 days, the civil penalty increases to $5,000 per day per violation. If the violation continues past 120 days, the civil penalty increase to $10,000 for each day per violation, and then it continues with the existing language. I believe this was what was talked about and given direction to the staff. At this point, we still have the ability to change this before we bring it to the board for full approval. At this point, I just open it up for this particular issue if there's any questions on this.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, I have 2 questions. Is one of the violators here candescent? Because I was receiving phone calls regarding that issue. I was just wondering.
Yes, I believe it is candescent. Is that right, Danny? Yeah, one of them is.
And the other thing on there, are we still providing water service to these locations that are in violation?
Correct. We are.
Would it be improper for us to say you're ignoring our restrictions and everything and just shut their water off?
We do have that we do have that in our toolbox.
Okay.
But then talking with legal counsel and other things that may happen by shutting them down, that may prohibit them from actually paying their fine or fixing the problem. And if they have any product that is actively growing, then there may be some issues about their product and put us at risk for any of those issues. So I think what we were talking about before is increasing the fines made more sense so they could continue to work with us in shutting them down. However, to your point, the next slide, we were talking about termination of service. simply, simply,
Should have
simply,
waited. Anyway,
it's okay.
Sorry.
Simply keeping with what we talked about. One of the things that we talked about as a board, we wanted to make sure that we brought it to all the board members. Looking through the document, we did have executive committee of the board. So we simply just removed that reference and left it as such. We may revoke any wastewater discharge permit, terminate for cause, wastewater service violation, threaten and such and so forth from the water code. So we will have the ability and the board will be active in any termination of service.
Can I ask you to go now? You've answered Director Martin's question. Can you go back to the previous?
Sorry.
It's all right. The wording here, I understand what it means. After 90 days, it goes up to 120 days, but so after 90 days of the violation, the civil penalty will increase to $5,000 each day if the violation continues past 100. So it's not very clear as to first 90 days would be 1,000. After that, it would be 5,000. So if it could be a little bit clearer, because some people may misunderstand that. We understand it because we're sitting here with you.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? If you can make it a little bit, other people may misunderstand that also.
Okay. We have sent this to legal review as we started preparing our staff report. We do have the ability to change the wording on that. So we will work with legal counsel and we'll see if we can't clean up the language a little bit better.
Thank you. And maybe you haven't gotten to that slide yet, but wasn't some of this money going to be used, the money that we're finding them, be used to try to help them to come in compliance?
So when we start negotiating with them, we can use those funds however we see fit.
Okay.
So it's not specific to one particular activity. So
All right.
that is still part of the process. When we start negotiating that and in lieu of terminating their service, we will bring an agreement to the board to allow us to have that flexibility. So the ordinance doesn't need to be updated from that perspective because we have the flexibility to do that now.
All right. Thank you.
Questions? Yeah. And again, workshop. So if you have a question,
Thank
go
you.
for it.
So I've been thinking about our conversation that we last had and thinking about how we were moving forward with this and thinking about the discussion from both attorneys that advised us. And I do have an issue with continuing with a $10,000 per day violation at 120 days. I think that if we reach 120 days, we need to proceed with shutting off their water, which would be whatever process that would take, which would then require them most likely to appeal and do a hearing and et cetera, at which time I'm happy with the $10,000 a day while we are noticing them that their water is going to be shut off and letting them get their lawyers involved. I don't think that a judge would uphold our maintaining $10,000 a day when we have an ability to stop the pollution by simply turning the water off. And if that means they violate a crop or they ruin their own business because they didn't do things they were supposed to do, I think that is their choice at that point. But I think that if we just continue down the path after 120 days at $10,000 a day, when we have the ability to take further action that stops it altogether, I think that is what a court would be more likely to uphold. And I'm just giving my 2 cents.
I think it's too lenient. I think 90 days is too long. I think 60, we should bump it up. And then I think that once we do that, we let them know that should they go another 60 days, we will terminate their service, as well as if anything beyond 120 will be $10,000 per day should they do an appeal. But I think I don't see why we should be waiting and waiting and waiting. And if we give them notice, if we give them sufficient notice that we will be turning your water off if you are not compliant, they cannot blame us if their product goes bad. If they continue to produce and continue to pollute, it's on them. I just think this is too, I mean, we've been going, what, a year and a half on one person?
We have, as we've gone through the process.
And what is
changed.
what is their current fine?
Their current fine right now is $2,000 per day because they have 2 violations.
What is their total?
195 and 215.
Thank you. $195,000 and they're still not compliant. So in other words, we're going to say that we're going to do you $60,000. They're not going to be compliant. And then another 5, what's that? 5 times 30 is 150, $300,000. Now you're up to $360,000 maybe. But the way these things are going, I think we need to be tougher. And the bottom line is that we're not doing this just for fun's sake. We're doing this because what this is doing is polluting. It's polluting everything.
In working with our attorney who has done this in Banning, Beaumont, Needles, and other locations, in reality, when you start finding people, typically that changes behavior. I think our issue is that we have been operating a pretreatment program and not gone to this level, so we haven't changed behavior. So the way this is worded now, based on my understanding from our legal team, is that we still have the flexibility to increase the fines almost immediately. One of the things it talks about here, another regulatory agency, if they are polluting our system to the point where it's violating our permit, and the California State Water Quality Control Board comes to us and starts fining us, we'll immediately go to $10,000 per day. We have the flexibility in here.
But then should the civil penalty shall be no less than $1,000 for each day? Because this says it's a flat 1,000. If you're saying we have the ability to bump it up.
Well, and that's the first sentence, actually not to exceed $10,000 for each day for which a violation occurs. So we have the ability to go 10,000 immediately. What we were trying to do is we don't want to fine our customers. We want our customers to be compliant. So we're trying to work through a process where we're trying to change behavior. $1,000 a day wasn't changing behavior, so we wanted to increase it based on programs that have been in other cities and other water districts. Typically, the first fine, cease and desist, stops it immediately and they comply. We just haven't had the ability to change that behavior and know that we're serious. Of the 4 violators that we've had, one of them has reached out to us. A second one has now reached out to us, and the other 2 hasn't even reached out to us yet. So I understand where the board is coming from and wanting to hit them hard. We can hit them hard. We were just trying to codify what the process would be so people understood the ratcheting up, if you will, of the penalties. If the board would like us to be stronger, we can obviously be stronger. But we were just we understand that, and I will speak for the entire district. For the last 10 years, we have not proceeded down this path, and it's been a slow process, both on our side, because we didn't want to misstep, and we wanted to make sure that we could collect these penalties, but also we really wanted people to comply, and they just aren't doing it because they don't believe that we're serious.
Did you get spanked as a kid, or did you get time out?
I got both. I was not a very good child.
What was more effective?
It depends what toy got taken away from you, to be honest with you. But no, I see your point. There is a reason why we can go to $10,000 per day, and that is something that we are willing to use. But being the fact that we've only done 4 to date, going back to a history that goes back to almost, I'm trying to think, 2008, we were just trying to set the process. So if we did take someone to court, we could have something that we could point to and say, this is what we've done. Even though we could have gone to $10,000 a day, we started off smaller because we just really wanted you to comply. The other issue is the type of violation, why they are violating our pretreatment limits. Some of them could be just over, some of them could be a lot over. From that perspective, then you turn around and say, what is your impact to our system? To date, we have not violated our discharge permit. Now, we have come close in certain aspects that could be related back to these illegal discharges, but to date, we haven't. So when someone comes to us and says, what is the actual penalty? What is the cost you've incurred as a district? We haven't got a fine from the state. However, we do know that we're using more air, we're using more staff time, we're doing a lot of different things, possibly even more sludge management. So these costs would go to those types of activities. They are a penalty. I'm not defending what this is. I'm just giving you some of the things that we've been told from our attorney and how we're trying to change behavior. If the board feels that this is not enough, then we'll take it out and we'll change it.
I have another question for clarification. Mike. If somebody's leasing or renting the land and they're being fined, they go bankrupt, does these fines go onto the property owners?
It does. It does. And that's one of the things that going through this process has taught us. I know Director Duff has brought it up to us multiple times about their cannabis license and how we can go after that and how we can do things differently. The water code does allow us to put it on the property tax going through a process, and then a shutoff is also part of the process. So we have a pretty substantial toolbox.
Let me ask you this. How does the property owner then protect themselves from ending up with a $300,000 fine?
That's a great question. And that's one of the things that we're going through right now. From that perspective, most of our discussions have been with the actual grower or the manufacturer or the person that was actually doing the discharging, not the owner. We then started going through our disconnection process where we then, hey, you didn't pay your fine. Now we put it on your water bill or send you a separate bill. And now that one also goes to the owner because that then allows us to then put it on the tax.
I think that we have an obligation to the owner. And I agree with Vice President Griffith, shut them off as soon as we can.
Okay.
To just tag on, do we know of the 4 violators? Are any of them also the property owner, or are they all just? I mean,
I believe 2 of the 4 are our property owners as well as operators.
Okay, I have a question on it. Clearly, we can't be the only water agency that's going through something like this with the cannabis industry. How does our policy compare with other jurisdictions who have similar problem?
So when we updated our policy, we updated the discharge limits, and we were looking at not only our own discharge permits, but also at LA County and some of the other Southern California agencies and how they do that. The unique thing about LA County, for example, is you can actually buy certain credits that allows you to discharge more. That's something that we have not done. We have not added that to our portfolio yet, but we're looking into that and doing a study where we could actually sell. What I'm talking about is it's selling the overages, if you will, for
Like a carbon credit.
Exactly. It's probably the right analogy as a carbon credit. That's what most people understand. We would have the ability to do that. So in those particular cases, these folks still wouldn't be compliant, but they would be purchasing a higher cost of discharge water, and we would be recouping our cost effectively by doing that. We just haven't implemented that program yet.
Well, the problem with that, of course, is that they're still contaminating our water system by illegal discharge. I just think that we wait too long in saying, okay, you're in violation. You're not. We've notified you of your violation. We've implemented fines. We've been trying to get you compliant. You refuse to comply. We're shutting your water off.
Valid points, and we can change what's in red here to read in that fashion. Go ahead.
Question. So then, and let's keep in mind, this is an industrial discharge. So, right, I keep hearing cannabis, which is primary industry, but think about a heavy industry. If they are dumping lead, cadmium, other chemicals into the water, think about these fines and how long you're going to let this go on. At what point does remediation exceed what we're going to fine them? So I think if you're going to talk about industrial discharge, you want to look at industrial discharge, not just cannabis, and think about what effect are these fines going to have. Second, start of service. So for any industry, should we, or commercial building, at the start of water service, as part of that application, should we not have something that refers to this to let them know that should a tenant violate these, you may be responsible for fines that will go on your taxes, so they're aware in advance?
So let me answer the second question first. Yes, when we are trying to work with these folks, but there, as you know, the cannabis industry has a lot of changeover, and especially recently. So there have been situations where the owners changed and they may not have changed the service because the bill just gets paid. So from that perspective, Mission Springs has to do a better job to keep up with those changes of ownership. We do have a process. We have an application for them to take out a permit, and we are going through that process and trying to get them to make sure that we know who the right person is and making sure that the owner is aware. When you sign up for service, there is a long thing that talks about and who the owner is. We go through that process. It's a vetting process before we turn on the service.
But before the building is, when we certify it as okay, then the owner should get some notification that this, just so you know, this is going to go to your tenants so that they are aware, not just when there's a switch in ownership or tenancy.
Correct. And that's something that we are working through from an outreach perspective to make sure that everybody is aware, including the owner.
Okay.
Your second question that you were talking about, you were asking about if it is something like mercury, for example. Let's say you're a dentist office and you still use mercury and there's an issue coming down. We would shut them down immediately because we take them out of business, but there's no crop or other materials behind them, and it's the severity of it. If mercury hits our system, that is an instant violation from the regional board, and we pass that fine along the way. So what we're looking at here is we're looking at.
Is that in here or in any of our documents?
If you look, unless otherwise directed by the general manager, board action, a sign violation by another regulatory agency. So that does give us the ability to either increase or insist, prohibit. We have the ability in this framework to go after, depending on what the release of illicit discharge is. So we can go right to termination.
But we're not checking those smaller places for mercury, are we?
Typically, people do not look at those. What happens is when it hits a spike at the plant, you go back through and look at, you can sometimes tell what area it came from, and then you focus down of what commercial properties you have there. A lot of other instances where you have a large, for example, I'll use a juicing facility, they'll actually have a sampler as it goes out and then testing either the pH or the BOD or the TSS. There's a lot of different things from a level of sophistication. That's why one of the things that we do when we look at the process, we ask for a plumbing plan. So we know what they have, what they're using. We tour the facility so we know what chemicals are putting into the system. And then of course, then we do our monitoring at a specific location. Because we have not been appropriately enforcing some of these, we have some areas that don't have adequate sampling facilities, or the use has changed significantly enough where we can't even go in and test these facilities. We have been working with some of these folks over 2 years, trying to get them to update not only us, but also the city, to try to get them to get plumbing plans so we can appropriately test. So yes, this has been a process. It's, as we talked about, it is not moving as fast as any of us would like. We're not changing behavior fast enough. We're not terminating service. There's a lot of things that we'd like to do. So you're absolutely correct. And I hear the board loud and clear. It should be 60 days, not 90. And at 120, we should be terminating services. So we need to rework these last two sentences. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I don't know. There may be legal reason for the 60 and there may be legal reasons for 90. So make sure that passes legal with as far as notifications and et cetera. But for me, I just want to reiterate, it's not necessarily about moving faster. It's about actually meaning what we say. And so if we say you're getting these fines because you're polluting our groundwater and you're potentially going to get us a fine on our wastewater plants, then I don't care if they're growing enough broccoli to feed the entire world. And I don't think any court would either. Okay, so I don't want to be made fearful of potential litigation. Our job is not to worry about that. Our job is to worry about our groundwater and meeting our permits and meeting our obligations for that. The rest is between the city and the state that licensed them, and whatever else they're doing is their business. But as far as what I'm concerned about is that we have to have teeth in what we're doing. And the money, because it's all negotiable, it's all something they can try and navigate through, try and legal their way out of, try and negotiate out of. It doesn't get paid, it doesn't do us any good. It doesn't get put on the right property, it doesn't do us any good. Putting the water off, putting them on notice at 120 days that your fine is now $10,000 a day per violation. And here's your notice in however many days is legal to give them notice that we're shutting off their water. Then that's an additional $10,000 a day for that. And if they go into court and we have to stay the termination while we go through legal, that's $10,000 a day, and the court would uphold that. But if we just continue adding money and we don't stop what's causing their ability to do it, no sewer. If there's no water, there's no sewer, right? No water, no sewer. And I just want to reiterate that. I understand the rest of the process. I just think we have to finish it properly.
I just got to piggyback on that. Backflow devices. So a business has a backflow device, a hotel. How long do we let them go with that broken before we shut them off? And how much notice do we give them before we shut it off?
Danny, would you like to take that question?
Certainly. So when a device or a hazard has been determined, we give them a notice immediately. They are given 30 days with the opportunity to request an extension. Good reasons for extensions are availability. There was an issue with brass product. There still is. It's not as bad as it was 2 years ago, but those are some of the reasons. They just can't get the repair parts or the replacement.
Okay. And so after those 30 days, we would go shut them off.
That's what is written, and that's typically what we would like to practice. But when they're businesses and things like that, we made some concessions.
If we did it, we would not be liable for any lost revenue to a hotel because they had to call other guests and say, you can't come out here because we have no water, correct?
A court would decide that. We would not decide that.
Realistically, do you think that would happen?
Realistically, based on our conversations with our attorney, and I apologize, our legal counsel is not here. This is a conversation we can pick up at our next meeting. But from a risk perspective, we do everything we possibly can not to shut someone off, especially a business. And that's the way we've practiced. And to my knowledge, we may have threatened to turn someone off for a backflow. I don't know that we ever have.
That's correct. We go the distance and communicate. There's been instances where we're talking with a manager here and our corporate is in Kentucky.
Okay. So, but when that 30-day, whatever that policy is, was put in place, legal counsel was consulted for that, correct?
Correct.
So then the assumption could be made that they knew that if you did that you would be okay. I think the same thing would apply here, where if we give them sufficient notice, they know if we don't comply, we're going to lose our water. They lose their water, they lose their crop, that's on them. If it was me and I had no intention of changing what I was doing, I'd stop growing and pack up and move. But that's just me.
I'd like to see some kind of termination of service in this.
Yeah.
Just to give them even more advance notice of, if you go to that 120 days, you basically made your own bed. Like,
Here's
Water service will be terminated.
here's where I'm at with this now that I've heard everybody. I was a little bit tough in the beginning, and I'm going to be tougher now. You've all heard me say about the military bases and how the pollution around the military bases and how counties and cities need to start using code enforcement to come down a little bit harder on the residents and businesses when it comes to knowing what is polluting the groundwater. Here we have a case of these people just saying no without having any regard for the future of their own grandchildren and pollution of this water. So where I'm at right now here with this is I would just like to see it go 1,000 for the first 30 days, 5,000 till 60 days, and then 10,000 at 90 days. And you hit 90 days, your water is going to be turned off. That gives you 90 days to comply. And if they comply within the first 30 days and start working with the water district, then it'll just be $1,000 fine. But if they're just going to totally disregard it, then be done with it. 1,000 for 30, 5,000 at 60, and 10,000 at 90 days, and their water gets turned off. We can't have this people polluting our groundwater anymore. We say we don't have some problems. We don't have some problems with forever chemicals being put in the ground. We don't have them now. But if we keep going this distance with all these folks, we will end up with it eventually. And I know that's what we're trying to do here today, is to correct this. And apparently we need to come down harder on them. The property owners, it's rough being a landlord. Property owners are going to get stuck with some of this, and we don't need to see that either. So let's just come down hard.
Can I just make a little comment? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. Thank you.
And thank you for your comments. I think a little bit of a history lesson is required a little bit. You know, our city, they were pioneers, right? And they opened up this Wild West industry here. And MSWD was behind in the 8 ball in it. And we're paying the price for that now. And the city is paying the price for their choices and decisions too. And the industry is struggling. I am not wanting to kill business in our city. I think we all sit here at this dais and agree that we aren't wanting to hurt business. We aren't wanting to hurt profits for the city. We aren't wanting to hurt profits for the entrepreneurs in our town. At the same time, accountability is required. And we have to have partners at the city that are going to be willing to follow their own rules and make sure that when they are approving new projects, that we are that we're in the discussion somewhere. And I think that's part of the problem in what we're going through, is that we weren't included in some of the conversations and some of the businesses that were allowed to open in the way they were allowed to open. And so there are businesses that have to redo a lot of their plumbing. They're going to have a lot of monitoring portals that need to be manufactured and created and installed because they don't exist, because they weren't required at the time to exist. So I know that we have to give people time, but we've given them since March of 2024. So that's what I also wanted to reiterate. You guys have, the staff here have been working so hard to try to assist the same industry that was crying out that them hauling their water was costing $250,000 or more a year, and that it was killing them, and that it was breaking their business. These are the same people that are not on board with the plan we provided them within the means the state has allowed us to provide them a tool to keep their business and do things the right way. So I know not very many people watch our workshops, but I know we have someone from the city, and I hope that they can cry from the rooftops that we are here to work with people that are willing to work and do things the right way. We will help, we will do what we can do, but there are rules that need to be followed, and they need to be held accountable for those rules. Thanks. Done with my soapbox.
So I guess general consensus is to
I was going to say,
shorten the time before we get to a turnoff. And then how does that go into effect for, I mean, if they're at 195 and 210 at $2,000 a day, they're over 90 days already.
they are.
So come board meeting, if this passes,
We can increase them immediately, and we have the ability to do that. And we could increase it now. I think what we were trying to do is make sure that everybody was on the same page and showing that. So we will handle the, excuse me?
Have we given them a shot?
We have not given them a shuttle maintenance.
I was actually
So-
going to ask the same question.
So from that perspective, we have I heard two different things, 60 days, and then 60 days, we then go to 5,000. At 120 days, we go to 10,000 and we terminate service. I've also heard another plan where it's $1,000 for 30 days, $5,000 for 60 days, and then 10,000 at 90 days, and then 120 termination of service. We can do it either way. We can think about this for the next couple of weeks. We'll be bringing this back at our study session, and then we're doing it at a public hearing on Monday when we actually will then vote on what the final language is. We have properly noticed this item, so we will have a public hearing. We'll be able to change it at that time. But I guess from what the text that I want to put in the ordinance that we will talk about at the study session, 60/60 or
Well, I think my thought is I'd rather get to that termination of service sooner. So if 90 days is the right amount of time, maybe it's 30, 30, 30 for fines. I'm not as big on the fines as I am on the termination of service.
Okay.
It shouldn't be allowed to pollute. One business could pollute 40,000 people's water. I mean, I think the sooner we can get to the
So
termination,
what if we did kind of a hybrid? So if you did 30 days at 1,000, 60 days at 5, and at 90 days, you have a 30-day shut-off notice and it goes up to $10,000.
And at 120, it's potentially shut off or we're in court.
One final comment that I would like to make is we have a reputation for providing the best water in the world. We've won countless awards for that service and everything. People who are violating this are jeopardizing that, and I think that termination of service has got to take a priority over long-term penalties, financial penalties. So,
Danny, you were going to say something?
No.
Okay. I don't, speaking for now, I know we have a shut off program for our water service that is necessarily applicable to this particular issue, because if they are polluting our system, we can shut them off at any time. So I think you and I had the same thought, but we realized at 30-day notice, we can do that from a sewer perspective. So.
Yeah, my mind's all over the place on this one. And I'll just say, when it comes to meter protection, that's where backflow goes. If it's the hazard is that severe, it's immediate. We'll shut them off. We won't jeopardize the system. Clarify earlier what I said about the 30 days. Typically, the issue that we have is a low hazard. They have a backflow that has an issue. It's working, but it's not working like it's supposed to, and the values aren't presented like they're supposed to. So in cases where they're severe, we'll do an immediate shut off. So that's a little bit different than where the water goes to our wastewater system, goes to the ground, and it has a long-term effect. It also has potential notice of violation, but if we don't start somewhere, then we aren't getting ahead of that. So that's why I wanted to make sure. Vice President Griffith, I'm glad you brought up the fact that this is a industrial pretreatment program, not a cannabis related, as one of the violators is not a cultivator. So, but I just wanted to make sure that in my mind, I hear what everybody's saying. I really appreciate the input, because it's going to make a difference what we make that decision when the board votes on it. But I'm thinking that I don't like to see a certain type of business maybe dictate how this program is moving forward. When we think about potential loss of something, it doesn't have to be a potential loss of a grow or a product. It just means that they have to stop. So that's where I am with it. I'll stop. Thank you.
I just think if you have this, it's 90 days, you got 30 more days, your fine's gone up and we're going to shut you off. But throughout the process, let them know that should it go past 120 days, service is shut off. That is sufficient notice to give us, I think, some legal coverage that people are aware and the reason why. So it also gives you time. So if there's something that you have to order and it takes a couple of weeks, you have time to start the process. But I don't think we should be gone past 120 days with water service for people who continue to pollute.
and then in addition to this, can we have some options as what we should do for these 4 that are, I mean, once this takes effect, do we instantly do a 30-day shut off notice for those that still haven't?
I think if they're working with us, I think we do it today. You have the right to do that, correct?
We do.
Okay.
I agree, Vice President Griffith. Do it today. It's gone on too long.
We will work with our legal counsel to make sure that we do not put ourselves at risk. and we will bring something back to the board. If we do have the ability to turn them off, the two that have not reached out to this, then we will shut them off before our next study session. So we'll work with legal counsel.
I would give them an update.
30.
We'll work with legal counsel on that. And I apologize that legal counsel is not here. Peter Nolan is very familiar with this process and what some of the risks are. We will make sure he's at our next meeting. And if there are any changes to the final language, we can still have an opportunity to make that at the study session and as well as at the public hearing on Monday. So I appreciate the board's input and thank you so much.
Thank you. Item 6, Proposition 218 rate adjustment process update. General Manager.
Thank you, President Sewell. I will let Assistant General Manager Marion Champion take on this item. Marion.
Thank you, General Manager Macy. I believe that most of you are aware our Prop 218 mailers went out last week to all customers and also to property owners. In preparation for the mailer, we did do training with our field services staff and our customer service team, providing them with talking points and information. We are tracking any inquiries that are coming into the district as they're received. And if there's any hard questions, we've given them, carte blanche to forward those over to me personally so that I can return those calls and emails as well. We've also created a webpage. It's mswd.org/rates. That webpage has a copy of the Prop 218 mailer, a copy of the cost of service study, the meeting schedule, some helpful FAQs, and also the protest and objection information. So should members of the community need more information. Since that time, we have seen some media coverage with the Desert Sun story, and we've also seen a few social media posts. We also last night held our first public meeting at the Carl May Center. We had 2 members of the public in attendance, and we had a very good dialogue with them. Because it was such a small group, we were able to make it a little bit more conversational and really go into some details on things that specifically they were interested in. But in general, the outreach, we've been doing a ton of outreach. We've been communicating. I've got a meeting later today. We're going to do an update with the Friends of the Library. So we are out there. We're presenting as much as possible and trying to be very transparent with everything. And that's the end of my update.
Questions, comments?
Great work. I can't tell you how I think it makes such a difference, even in the neighbors that have reached out to me since receiving the notice. They are so impressed with the amount of information we are providing. And I just want to make sure that the staff hears that that is appreciated. And I know that it's a lot of work, but thank you for all that you're doing.
I'll just echo that. I think we could have easily sent out a small little postcard with not many details. And really, if you read this pamphlet, it really lays out the whole story. So thank you. And with that, we'll move on to item 7, Assessment District 15 Area M2 Sewer and Water Line Replacement Project Update.
Thank you, President Sewell. Members of the board, I will ask our engineering manager, Eric Weck, give the presentation. Eric?
Yes, thank you, General Manager Macy. Good morning, President Sewell and members of the board. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, for you.
Okay,
We
great.
hear you.
Thank you. This morning's workshop agenda seeks to update the board on the recent bid solicitation of bids for the AD15 Area M2 Septic to Sewer Conversion and Water Line Replacement Project. On August 19th, the district received 6 bids from contractors for the construction project, and of note, 3 of the lowest bids that are at the top of the spreadsheet, the PowerPoint slide there, are all within $645,000 of each other. On a construction project that is on a $22 million cost basis, that small spread between 3 of the lowest bids shows that it is a competitive construction market and the contractors are using similarly priced materials. The lowest bid received was from Borden Excavation in the amount of $22,074,873. Shortly after receiving the bids, and while staff was evaluating them, the second lowest bidder Big Ben Engineering submitted a bid protest. The bid protest was based on Borden not submitting forms pertaining to the most recent update of federal and state labor wage rates. Staff and legal counsel reviewed the bid protest and found that although Borden did not submit the current Davis-Bacon Fair Labor Standards Act Form C1, Borden did acknowledge the Addendum 6 during the bid process that called out the updated labor wage rates. Likewise, Borden did make it clear to the district last week that they will honor their prices and guarantee their workers on the project, including all subcontractors, will be paid the updated wage rates. Legal counsel was brought in, and as recently as this morning, legal counsel has been making suggestions on the path forward to navigate this project through the bid protest. We are going through the process with legal counsel now to make sure that the low bidder is identified clearly. Finally, staff was going to bring to the board in September, in the September board meeting, the request to authorize awarding the project to Borden Excavation. However, once the bids were received and staff received the bid protest and also found that the lowest bid received exceeded the available state grant funding amount, staff immediately reached out to the state to discuss this project with them. After speaking with the state last Thursday morning, we discussed the bid protest and, more importantly, the issue of funding for the project. We discussed with them how the project would be impacted by the funding, and staff asked if there were other options that the state had that would be available to close the gap. Keep in mind that this funding gap includes the roadway improvements, because we're going to be adding that to the new FBA, around the regional facility, and also the water line replacement project from backyard easements, as well as the M2 septic to sewer project area. Based on discussion with the state, they initially proposed an option of using a 50-50% split, in that 50% of the shortfall would be grant funded and the other 50% would be in the form of a loan. However, this is not a viable option for the district because the ratepayers would have to pay for the loan, which goes against Prop 218 requirements. In discussing that issue with the state, they acknowledge that and are looking for other funding options as well. So what are the next steps? Well, today staff does not feel, as it stands now, comfortable bringing the construction project to the board this month until we resolve how the project will be fully funded. Staff is working with the state to give them the information on the bids received, as well as talking with the state to see what other options are available to the district to fund the project. Once we know what the options are, staff will bring them back to the board. Per the public contract code, the district has 90 days from the date of the bid opening to award the project to the contractor, which gives us a little bit of maneuvering room to work with the state on figuring out the final direction of funding. 90 days brings that date to November 17th, 2025, which, as it happens, is the board meeting in November. That's on a Monday. So we would like to see if we can resolve this issue by October so we can bring it to the board in October. But in working out the dates, it looks like November 17th is the 90th day. And if we can award that at the latest in the November 17th board meeting, I think we'll be okay. Both myself and General Manager Macy are here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Eric. Questions from the board?
This time.
Just curious. What are our options if the state cannot come up with the additional funding?
The
Downsize?
we can look at downsizing. We can look at not moving forward with the project. There are other options in addition to, as you know, we've had a lot of support from our legislative body. We could go back to them because right now we're just dealing with staff and they're looking at our existing agreement that we signed several years ago and trying to work within that existing agreement. So there are several options that are available to us. Downsizing is one, not doing is the other, also working with legislative staff to try to increase the amount of funding that the then Department of Water Resources is going to allocate to this particular project. The reason we're bringing this to you, we talked about bringing this in September. It's not going to be September. We are looking at other options, but also, as you can see here, the three bids are very close to each other. We did think about maybe possibly rebidding the project, but typically that wouldn't change the number. So at this particular case, in addition to that, this is the full project amount. One of the things that we have initiated at the board and staff level is rear yard easements for the water line. A water line component is in this particular project. We could remove that to try to reduce that gap. So there's several different things that we're looking at. I just know that since we were all at a conference last week, some of you may have heard about this, but not all of you. So we just wanted to be as transparent as possible to let you know that we did receive bids. They were higher than expected, and we are working with the state to try to reduce that funding gap, if you will. So we will definitely continue to update the board as we move forward.
I would like to, if worst comes to worst, to downsize, not abandon the project, just downsize it so that we have made some kind of progress in that M2 area.
And this is one of the reasons why the state staff is working with us to where we are today, because they do realize that the whole reason we got the conveyance line and the new treatment plant was because we were doing the septic to sewer and helping our groundwater quality protection program. That is the fundamental reason we started the project. Because of the sequence of construction and because some of the decisions that the state has made in delaying the bidding of that project has driven up the cost. So they are aware of some of our concerns and where we are, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to resolve it and be able to fill in the entire gap. But obviously, we're working through a process.
This is twice what we estimated the cost being, correct?
I believe so. I think it was closer
Double.
to $7 to $8 million, and it's double. Yes.
Okay. And we're certain that what was bid, all of the specs were correct, and sending it out for rebid because these are ridiculous isn't a good reason?
That is an option. But typically when you rebid a project, it comes back higher than instead of lower from that perspective. And the last thing, and Dan, you can step in here if you like, when you see three bids this close, knowing that it's a publicly bid project and you open the bids all at one time, typically a project of this size, you don't see bids that close, especially when you look at the first and second bidder. So I feel that we've got good bids. I think that the specifications were clear enough that everybody walked into the same room and said, this is what we're bidding on. And that's why they are this close. It's just unfortunate that materials, costs, labor, pavement, everything else has escalated to the point where it's a significant increase in this project.
The initial estimate was when? When did we create the initial estimate?
Danny, do you know?
2 years, 3 years, 4 years?
Knowing that the loan or this agreement itself is 4.5 years, the original estimate is at least 5 years old. And as we've talked about in some of our other discussions about our rate increase, just the CPI has gone up 21%. Now, this is obviously almost double, but certain things have changed more dramatically.
Yeah, tariffs and et cetera.
Construction
Yeah.
costs have gone up 40% in the past 5 years.
Yeah. This unfortunately is reflecting all of the things that we've been hearing in the news and things of that nature.
Can I request when we have the conversations with the state, we keep in mind that every contractor is going to throw a 10% contingency, which they will use up. So that 22 million is not 22 million. That 22 million is more like 24 million.
Yes.
And I don't know if it muddies the waters too much, but I think we've seen as time goes on, it just continues to rise. Does reaching out to a Greg Wallace or Ochoa Bow to try and kickstart something to I mean, the longer we wait, the more it's,
Well, Eric brought up some very key points. Typically, a bid process, you can keep the bids open for 90 days. Now, you can extend that, but we do have a clock that we're working against now. The state realizes that we are not going to be, while we are trying to work with state staff best we can, we're going to go down other paths, because what ends up happening is the staff then has to go up through their process through DWR. They want to, when they turn to the right people, or if they're getting phone calls, the answer is yes, the regional board, things like that. So we are also working other avenues, and we want to make sure that the staff is successful as well, but also working within their time frames and within what they can do. So as Eric said, the first conversation, why it wasn't a yes, they were looking at ways to do certain, it wasn't a no. And I'll use the term that we heard on the call. They've already started looking at the back of the napkin, if you will, just to see how much money there is and the differences between this agreement and other agreements, because other agreements that they have now signed actually have a they have a threshold that they can't go past. Ours doesn't have that. Now, a lot of that has to happen because we were going through COVID while we were doing this agreement. So there was some flexibility, and not only where the funding was coming from, but also the agreement itself. So we've got a lot of things going in our favor. It's just the delta is bigger than we expected. So again, all we can do at this point is work with the state, pull as many levers as we can to try to lessen that gap, and then we'll bring something to the board. I don't think there is any way that we won't do a portion of this project. It's too vital to our groundwater protection program, but I also don't want to start taking a lot of big portions of it out either. So, and I don't think the state does either. They see the value in this project. They have from day one. Even when we started talking about this project, if you want to talk about long-term project, it was a $32 million project. And at the time, it was half grant, half loan. So we have been able to successfully move that needle in our direction, and we hope to continue to do so.
when I think you keyed on it, this is the reason for the plant and the project. Like this is,
and the state realizes that, and it's one of those things where I hate to use the chicken or the egg kind of thing, but because the sewer came last, but it was the most vital component of that, and we can't go out and bond for extending our sewers. The state realizes all that. So there's some things that are, by the way it played out, in addition, outside of the price, that I feel pretty confident that we'll be able to work with the state in some fashion.
and just a reminder, how many properties was that again? 600?
I want to say
Over-
605 total parcels,
Not 4, not 3, but 5.
roughly 600 parcels.
And then I'm trying to remember all these letters and numbers. The area that just we couldn't move forward 6 months ago.
That was
however,
D3.
How does that cost per parcel? Are we?
Danny's done
Pretty-
that on the back of a napkin.
I mean,
Danny,
it's
would
not
you-
apples to apples, but are we?
You got an economy as a scale issue there.
Okay.
But it's still close, as I recall.
It's close. I'll add to what General Manager Macy said. From experience, past experience, seeing bids, first 3 bids that tight, you've got good plans and
Mhm.
specs. That's a good thing for the district. What wasn't contemplated in the beginning is on-site abatement. There's a lot of ways you can strategize on how you can make this project different to come in. I'd almost ask that they don't do the on-site abatement. I know that's a bad thing to probably say for customers, but that still gives us sewer because we'll still have people connect. But one of the things that's unknown is what you're going to get involved in when you do on-site.
Are you talking on-site abatement of the septic?
Yes, sir. That's just
When you
my
did my
opinion.
section, I paid for that.
And that was one of the things that was part of this agreement. The state specifically wanted to make sure that they connected so we didn't have an issue after the fact. But Danny brings up a good point.
Yeah, that's a big wrench. I didn't mean to throw that in there. I'm just saying from neighboring agencies that have also been awarded funding for a similar septic to sewer project, it didn't involve any type of on-site abatement. It's great for our customers. I would agree. However, if it has the detriment of actually making the project go away, I'd want to work with them to see if we can actually do the entire area.
Because that'd be a much bigger chunk than say not doing the water line.
I don't have the bids in front of me, and I don't, it's something we can look at definitely.
I'm trying to think.
If you think about what we did
I
on the
think
septic, it
that
was
was
almost, it was,
10
it was-
years, almost 10 years ago, and I think it was about 3,000 for me.
Oh, it's changed. When the
I,
numbers.
well, I don't doubt that.
No, no, what I'm gonna say is I can't believe where they are because I can't see where they're getting the value. The labor hasn't gone up that much. The haul fees hasn't gone up. The materials to abate hasn't gone up. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. Maybe another strategy is to, and I know we're not here to strategize it. The biggest thing is let's hope the state gives us the money. But if we're having that conversation later, you could possibly parse out the abatement component of it and do that as a separate bid. There's opportunities there, but I will support what the general manager said. In items like this, they typically go up. You'll typically get contractors that now have everything out there. You might get a couple of contractors that come in lower. They're going to see that some subs are providing a service cheaper than their sub. They may partner with that sub and their overall number may come in, but they're going to still be over here. But the three contenders, you're probably going to see something similar, but all three will be higher.
I have a question. I know contractors are now doing a lot of bidding by using a program on their computer. It lays out the cost. Do we have a program similar to what they're using so that we know just exactly where they're at with their cost, their labor, and what it really should be?
Now, if you're asking about a software that they can provide us the bidding information, that software,
We'd have
yes,
to
we
get
do.
our own
We have OpenGov and we've had Planet Bids. But if you're asking for specific ways that they do the calculation for labor, overhead, equipment and things like that, we do not have that ability. We do not have that. I know that the contractors do. And from that perspective, what we typically do, and I think the question was, how did D3 relate to this particular project? I think D3 was around $400 a linear foot. I think when Danny did the math before, it was like maybe 400. It was 400 there. It's almost 400 here, a little bit more than that on this particular project. But as Danny said, when you look at I think it's 12,000 linear feet of 4-inch water main, that's going through people's landscaping around their house and things like that. There's a huge risk when you go on private property. And I think that's why Danny's making the suggestion that he is removing that quantity. So while we can look at specific bid items because of how we collect the data to actually have a software that would help us do it like a contractor does, we do not have that information to that detail.
Just a suggestion so that we know exactly where these guys are at, because it's quite a bit of a difference here with, $22 million all the way up to 29 million. That's a big spread there. So somebody's making a big profit or somebody's not getting paid enough. Yeah.
I appreciate staff really looking into all of our options. And like Danny said, let's just hope the state comes through.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this is just a general information that, because we've gone over this, I've gone over things similar to this over the years. And do companies ever finish a project under their initial bid, contingency aside, under their initial bid? Or is it always a little bit over their initial bid into the contingency?
Very rarely do they change your cost below what that is unless there's a significant change in scope or deletion of certain items. They would come in under that scenario. But no, they typically
Doesn't happen too often.
Correct.
Anything further?
No, but before we move on to the next item, one of the things that was handed to us, one of the things when we had public comment before, there was nobody from the public in the room. Now that we have public in the room,
Councilmember.
we may want to open it up to public comment.
Sorry for missing you, Councilmember Pai. Thank you for joining us today. Were you speaking on a specific item or just a general public comment?
General. I just wanted to state that you're going through a process. Yesterday, I went over with our city manager what I was going to do in public comments. Usually, Mr. Martin comes and I was going to ask him regarding the rate change. Can I talk about this? Because I don't know what your process is. Maybe Marion would come. Neither came, so I did nothing. And I told our general manager, I'm going to do nothing. I'm not getting into your process, and I don't want to put drama in your process because I wouldn't want you to do mine. I come to the meetings because the mayor assigned me to be a liaison, and that's all I'm doing. I will share with the city manager what you said regarding exactly what you want to do. I can at our next meetings share what you said. But other than that, I'm just here because the mayor asked me to.
Well, thank you. And we'll move on to item 8, our solar project construction update.
Thank you, President Sewell, members of the board. I'll ask our Director of Operations, Danny Friend, to provide this update. Danny?
Thank you, General Manager Macy. Good morning, President Sewell, members of the board. Hopefully this is a little lighter subject.
Is your microphone on?
And my microphone was not on. Excuse me for that. Thank you. So we're going to just do a quick update. If I can go to the next slide, please. So just reminding everybody what we had here as a project. The original project, even back when we were working with NG as a different project to what it is today, was originally 7 sites. Those 7 sites are 24, 29, 27, 31, 32. The Horton wastewater treatment plant, the Nancy Wright facility, and what we refer to as Res BCT is right above our existing facility. The current project today, after discussions and review, is 3 sites: the Horton wastewater treatment plant, the Nancy Wright facility, and again, the Res BCT. I'm, as of this morning, having a discussion with Kenwood Energy, our project manager. They're saying that how the project exists today from where it was first proposed is about 99% of the original design in energy production. Next slide. So again, the locations of those 3 sites that make our current project is the Horton wastewater facility. Up on the upper right is that red dot. To the far left, lower left, is the Nancy Wright facility, and then just immediately to the right of that is the Res BCT. Next slide, please. So we'll do a deeper dive into the Horton solar site. There is the footprint of the 30 acres that exists for Horton. We'll go to the next slide. These are the details of the product they're building today. It's 387.45 kilowatt DC kilowatts. The footprint itself of the solar arrays are just over 31,000. The fenced area is about 1 acre. At this site, they are going to be ground mounted, fixed tilt at 20 degrees. Construction for the Horton site broke ground slowly on the 21st. And then we've got first pile that was driven while you all were in Monterey. And I excitedly sent a video, which will come later. I'll spoil the surprise. And then it was started on the 27th, and estimated completion is about 2 months. Next slide, please. This is what that southeast corner looked like. The original asphalt pad that we used for sludge storage back in the 90s. And the area behind those pickup trucks, those are the contractors. The area behind it is what is the southeast corner with the solar array. Next slide. You can see after that they got on site, you can see piles behind that. Those piles are placed there by the district. That's where we either empty our vac trailers when we're going out and we're picking up from leaks, and we let it go out there and we dry out and we spread it. All of this is just wet dirt. We replace it with dry dirt. So they came in, put their laydown yard. You can see containers are getting delivered. Next slide. They started getting their equipment out there. You can see the dikes or the berms to the east. We're looking straight to the east. Those are just a catchment area. We have no water on the site, no water off the site. And next slide. You can see that as they start getting in there, starting to cut into some areas, level it out. Next slide. You can start seeing that the fence is starting to go in. That is looking roughly north-northwest. Those poles in the picture are at every row is an inverter, and those will hold the inverters. And at the most northerly point of that is where they put a combiner. They combine all the inverters. And so while all that's happening, they got fence work in the beginning stages. They start putting in the mounts for the inverters. Next slide, please. They're also doing installation of trenching and installation of conduit. Next slide. You'll see that this is the footprint earlier is the solar array. Then immediately north, they'll go out of that site, out of that combiner that I mentioned, and they're going to go ahead and make their way up to the switchgear and the meter up towards the more northerly part of the Horton plant. But that's them bringing that. That's what does the magic right here, is connects the solar generation to our meter, and that's the net metering process where we put the power back on the grid. Next slide, please. So this is the most exciting part of it. There's the third piling that's you see there. The one closest to the front of the picture is number 1, number 2, and they're on number 3. They did have an issue that they had to on that day. It was an exciting day. They got started. There was a little bit of more play than everybody desired, and what it did is it caused it to be a little bit off. And if you were to continue that, it would just exponentially just make it worse by the time you got to the end. So they all stopped. They corrected it, which is a great thing. Next slide, please. Where they are today, that was taken yesterday in the cloud. So they didn't get to work because of lightning concerns and flood, but that picture shows that they're right now, roughly based on the schedule that we had originally anticipated, they're about a week and a half ahead of schedule. So it's a good thing. So that means we're going to get into the next part where we'll start doing some bolting up of panels, start doing some wiring, start bringing all the conduit. So this is the exciting part. This is the loud part. Next slide. And we're going to get into the next site, the Nancy Wright facility. I had to go ahead and turn this so that we can get a decent view, but north is looking to the left. So if you can see as you're driving down Little Morongo, you'll come to our existing site, and then you'll come to our regional plant. The Nancy Wright facility is going to be located just westerly of our existing Res BCT site. Next slide, please. Here it is in its north configuration. That site slightly bigger than the Horton site's 392.04 kilowatts DC power, just 32,000, just over 32,000 square feet in the footprint of the actual solar arrays. Also, this site is a ground-mounted fixed solar. This site and the Res BCT site are both native, untouched, and the CEQA process was a little bit different than the notice of exemption that I brought to the board several months back. This is going through a complete initial study, mitigated negative deck, ISMND for short on the slide. Anticipated bringing that to the board and presenting on the Thursday study session. Right now, we are going to miss that window, and if everything plays out correctly, we'll amend the agenda so that we can discuss it on Monday and bring it to the board. So it's an important item. This is what is preventing us from being able to do any of the mitigation, the bio studies, so that we can get equipment on the ground and start those projects. One thing to note is there was never an intent to do like in concurrent schedules, so they weren't going to run the Horton or the Nancy Wright at the same time. They plan to finish up the Horton and move on to the regional site, which is important because the timing right now looks like we're going to be pretty good and right on schedule. So continuing, again, fixed at 20 degrees, just like the Horton site. Also, it's anticipated to start construction mid-November, roughly about the time that we get clearance from CEQA, and also about the time that we're also finishing up. If at all, we're doing not necessarily commissioning, but testing and things of that nature, and interconnection with Edison. Next slide, please. The Res BTC site is is the largest area footprint we have. It's 3,500, just over 3,500, or just below 3,600 kilowatt DC. The square footage of the solar arrays only are just over 440,000 square feet. This particular site will not have fixed. It'll have a positive and negative 60-degree single axis. And the project itself is also pending completion or pending construction start. Actually, it's a typo. Sorry about that. For this ISMND. So when we bring that to the board, it'll be covering both the sites for the Nancy Wright and the RSBCT. And anticipation for construction commencing on this project is around March 2026. Next slide. In anticipation of both the sites, the contractor has put out, the one on the left is the Nancy Wright, and the one on the right is Res BCT, and those are just letting you know that solar is soon to come. So next slide. So before we hit the button to go forward. This is a video of the pile driving on the very first one. It may be loud. Let's see how we adjust that volume. Not loud enough. We should really crank that. So that machine is a piece of equipment that is specialized. It's not converted from anything else. It's a specialized piece of equipment. Can you pause it by chance, or is it going to? Awesome. So it is nothing converted. Some people are like, oh, it's a backhoe with another attachment. No, that device is specifically a track device that is intended to go through worse terrain than you see that graded area that right now. And it does nothing more than just drive piles. There was a slide there's a slide earlier that I showed. Maybe you didn't catch it because I didn't point it out, but where I showed the cloudy weather and I showed all the pilings. And the front of that picture, you saw one sticking higher than the other. So for those that caught that, we did, out of all the pilings so far, we have 4 that I want to call them, sometimes they call it a point of refusal, where if we hit a rock, there's nothing else we can do. So sometimes you can excavate that and then remove the rock, and then you can go ahead with a excavated installation. Sometimes you can determine based off of an engineering calculation that it's in far enough and a location secure enough to actually be okay at that point. So they'll make that determination. But just to let you know, is that's something that happens. This equipment does that specifically. The reason I wanted to pause this is the gentleman on the left, you may not realize it, but he's holding a handheld device. And this is nothing more than something that communicates with that instrument. It also communicates up with GPS. So the last product that existing product that you go out and you talk about, they give you a table schedule and they say that this is the row and it's this long and they're every 66 inches or however far it calls out for. And then they basically put a little stake mark or a paint mark, and that's where X marks the spot. And that's how they used to do it with a string line and make sure it works out, right? This is 100% GPS. So while we're sitting there waiting for the same type, we're like, hey, when are you going to mark this? Well, we're not going to mark it. It's advanced. Every single one of these pilings will get driven in with a GPS location. This thing will track, it'll extend out, it'll set it, and it says go for it. And then you heard that pile driving. And right now, pictures I chose not to conclude, so it wasn't 25 slides, was exactly the dimension that it calls out. So it's really neat. I mean, so not to geek out on it, but it's neat to see how construction has really changed. So if you want to play the rest of the video, it's pretty much over. Yeah, there you go. They walked away. Hi, how you doing? And there you go. So next slide is, and I think you hit it again. Questions?
A quick one just right off the top. The 2 sites, the Horton and the first site down by the Nancy Wright plant, those are both our NIM projects.
Great question. I should have included that. The Horton and Nancy Wright are the NIM 2.0.
And as long as the CEQA is, we don't have any burrowing friends, we're looking like we're going to make that deadline of
nothing was visibly discovered. You got to remember, part of the mitigation is the French toad, lizard, the milk vetch, the kangaroo rat, the burrowing owl, and
Jerusalem cricket.
No Jerusalem cricket in that area. There's not an overlay, but so simply said, we go through a process. What's held us to this point right now is the Assembly Bill 52. AB 52 requires tribal consultation. So there has been a change of the guard somewhat at the tribe as far as who does that part and who we engage. So we've got that figured out. We've got the mitigation language. We've met with them. We've entered into what the required tribal consultation, and now we're incorporating that. So it also has a couple of other domino effects within the document. Part of that mitigation is they want to have a tribal monitor. So a tribal monitor will, and we're experienced with tribal monitors. We've had them on several projects. So in certain areas where they've determined there might be artifacts, if we're excavating at certain depths. So what we had to clarify is piling is not exposing anything, it's not excavating. So we got clarification that we won't have to have a monitor on site the entire time. But when we start getting into some of the deeper trenches at 5 foot or greater, they do want to have a tribal monitor. So that's one of the things that we're working through. That's what we're trying to incorporate. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we're going to amend the agenda for on Friday after the study session. So, but the first 2 are NEM. The others are obviously a RESBC tariff program.
Other questions?
Yes, I have a question real quick. just for clarification, when all of the solar fields are completed on there, how many different solar fields will we have under our jurisdiction?
Including the existing Res
Yes.
BCT site and the three, we'll have a total of 4.
Total of 4. And have we estimated the savings that will mean to our customers in terms of providing, because we're using solar power to.
It's a great question. We've done some estimations. We're working through that. One of the things I'd like to remind the board is about the Res BCT is the tariff program. Net energy metering at the NEM 2.0, you generate a kilowatt, you credit, you got it 1 for 1. And it's not always the same for Res BCT. So we're working through that and how that looks in this PPA contract. Why? Is because we generate credits. We generate credits during the day. We get to use them off on different peak periods. So they don't always have a 1 for 1. Sometimes they have a 1.5 to 1 in our advantage. In some cases, as high as 1.75 to 1 to our advantage. So it hasn't been quite figured out. Brian, I'd have to bring that back to the board of what the original estimation from NG was. And I think that may have been a little high, but do you recall?
I don't recall off the top of my head.
I want to say close to another 60% energy savings. What that number is today as far as an actual value, I don't have. I can bring that back to the board.
I just have a comment. It's hard for me to look at these slides because it saddens me to see solar panels being put on bare land where a building could go. Yeah, it's just sad to me. As far as the way that the posts are being put in the old days, they would put an explosion on top of the post and drive it into the ground. So yes, technology has come a long ways.
It has.
2 questions. How many staff members got to watch the pile driving?
I don't know the answer. I know that it's been at the Horton facility.
You were there for sure.
Yeah. So a few.
Very cool. I'm just teasing.
Yeah, it was neat. Honestly, it was something to geek out on.
That's very cool. And then the other part of the question is partially related. Our existing solar field, any status report, any status update on when it's going to be fully functioning and repaired?
Yes, actually, great question. I didn't include that, but I'm glad you asked. So we are working with PVCA, the original contract that came out and has done it. They've given us assessment. They provided us a proposal. Our contracts analyst, Amanda Lucas, is actually requested an updated proposal from a date perspective, and she's preparing to put that contract together. So I know she just recently reached out to them, but I would hope that based off of some of our discussion last week is we've already requested that we have a kickoff meeting since it's been a few months since we discussed so that we can get we want to get on the docket. We want to get in their queue so that we don't want to do that by the time we get things executed. Can we do that now? Can we get that started today? So we're working through that. I don't have a hard date of start, but we're looking to start hopefully within the next month and a half.
That's a beautiful thing to hear. It's been a very long time that we've had to fight getting people to do what they were contracted to do and they disappeared on us. So I'm really grateful.
Yeah, we are as well. One of the things I remind the boards in last month's general manager's update, I talked about the Sunny portal, which is the portal that we use to now communicate. I also mentioned that there's approximately 4 inverters that aren't communicating. So it's not that they're not producing, they're just not communicating. So that was a concern for General Manager Macy and myself. Oh, well, it's not showing up on this portal, so therefore we're not generating and we're losing all this. So the good news is we were generating. There are a couple of panels here and there that have been removed and some that are still stuck. So the work that I described, the contract that I described is going to correct that and also take care of the inverters that are not communicating. So we're hopefully in the next 2 months, given the time it takes to complete the work, we're going to be back up to where we were.
Great. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
You can actually get a little pile driver truck if you like, if you ask Santa and you behave.
I appreciate that. Maybe you can send that to me. Thank you.
And I have nothing further, so thank you for the update.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Item 9, General Manager comments.
Thank you, President Sewell. I just have one thing I'd like to bring up. I have just a quick We did receive a notification through American Public Water, Public Works Association. We did receive an award for our Nancy Wright Regional Reclamation Facility, the Project of Merit winner under the Drainage, Water, and Wastewater category. The award ceremony is going to be tomorrow at lunch. I just wanted to remind the board that we do have a table there. We do have a couple of spots open. I know 3 of you have already RSVP'd. If everyone would like to attend, please let us know and we'll either buy more spots or we'll work with staff. But just wanted to remind everybody that we will be receiving yet another award for the Nancy Wright facility tomorrow at noon.
That'll be at the.
So the award is at noon, or what time is lunch?
Lunch is between 12 and 1, and it will be part of the lunch program. So there's also an expo that starts earlier. I believe it starts at 9:30 in the morning. If you'd like to go through that and see what other folks are doing and other projects, other consultants, other contractors. But the lunch itself, when the award ceremony will take place, will be between 12 and 1.
Just on a clarification, I was one of the ones that RSVP.
You are, and it's going to be at the Agua Caliente Resort in Rancho Mirage. So
Is that on our calendar?
I don't know if it made it
No,
to
it
your
wasn't. That's how I missed it.
I don't think it was, but because we were only notified last week. So that was one of the things. And I think it was after, I think you had left town from Monterey. So I apologize for the late notice, but I think you've already RSVP'd if I'm not mistaken.
It's like 11:15.
I'm not sure.
We can work with Dory after the meeting. I know that
Okay.
I know that 3 people had RSVP'd and I was thinking that you were one of them.
Okay,
Dory.
yeah.
I'm one that can't make it, so
Okay.
there's only one other that. We'll figure it out.
But no, again, just very proud of the
I said
award.
Yes.
Yes, very proud of the award and looking forward to receiving that tomorrow. So that concludes our report.
Right. Thank you. Item 10, director comments and requests for future agenda items. Director Martin?
Just to comment, I really appreciate the extra work that today's items have created for the staff and everything. And I also want to compliment my fellow board members for really doing an outstanding job of, in my view, asking the right questions, getting the answers we need. So thank you.
Thank you. Director Mayor?
And yes, I just checked my calendar. I did get signed up for that one. I just wanted to say that when I mentioned the groundwater and how cities and counties need to think, I wasn't picking on our own city and county. It's in other counties, it's everywhere. A classic example is that here we are trying to hook up in the M2 area, come up with $22 million. And right in that same area, there's a mobile home park, which is regulated under the state, that does have, from my and in the past, from some of the residents, problems with their septic tanks. And so it's a joint effort between everybody. And I think the more that we try to protect our groundwater, the county area that we are involved with, along with the city, put the message out there that we are serious about protecting our groundwater, the better the message is. That's a positive message that's sent out to everybody. And I think it benefits the county, the city, and the district by sending a message like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Duff?
Just a community reminder, back in school, and we have a lot of little kids walking and riding bikes, and we don't have all school zones and crosswalks. So please watch out for the little kids as you're driving around, my son included. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice President?
I wanted to ask Director Martin, how's your dogs?
How's what?
How's your dogs?
My dog is just fine.
Okay.
And I'll just,
There's a hidden meaning here somewhere along the line. After the meeting, I'll try and figure out what it is.
I just have a thank you
Conversation.
to staff. I think this is probably one of the busiest our district's been in quite a while with the 218 process, M2. There's a lot of things going on. And so to just maintain our general level of service and add all these things on top, I appreciate the hard work that everyone's doing. So thank you. And with that, the meeting is adjourned.